Over and Back Classic NBA Podcast. I am Jason, and with me, as usual, is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hello.
Welcome. It's been a while since we had a chance to chat about basketball history, but I think we got an exciting show coming up here.
Yeah. I've been jet setting all across the world, and Nevada and California, but hey, jet setting all across the world. But I'm back. I visited the home of the team that we're going to talk about twice here. And by visited, I mean I briefly drove by it, but hey, it still counts. And I was inspired, Jason, as I was driving by Sacramento, California, and thinking, man, Kings have been bad for a while, haven't they?
Land of the Kings, absolutely. Yeah.
They have been bad. So they have been bad for quite a while, and that kind of got us ready. It also kind of coincides with the march towards the end of this NBA season, this 2021 NBA season, and the revelation that yet again the Sacramento Kings will be under 500. Yet again, the Sacramento Kings will miss the playoffs, and yet again, another pathetic year for the Sacramento Kings. So,
right. Sadly for the Kings, it is their 15th consecutive season of, definitely they are going to be under 500. There's no chance of them being under 500. As we are recording this episode, there is a very small chance that they could make the playoffs. So, the 3 games out of the last play-in spot, there's 5 games left as is recording. Technically, they could win out. They could still make the play-in. They could then win the first play-in game, which would probably be against the Grizzlies. And then they could beat the loser of the 7-8 play-in game, which right now would be the Warriors or the Lakers, to make the playoffs. Now, even though our track record for predictions this season has not been good.
Not great.
Going to go ahead and still label this one unlikely.
No, I like this. I like this idea of the upstart Kings, then blazing through the play-in,
Kings.
Then destroying either the Lakers and or the Warriors, which I'm sure they would do really easily, and then going on a miracle run and probably losing the conference semifinals. But hey, you know what? It'd be their first playoff run since 2006. So I mean, that would be. Yeah. Rick Adelman was their coach. Brad Miller was their best player the last time they made the playoffs. So it'd be nice to see them do that. So are you and I officially declaring? Because there's some weird, people argue about this during the NCAA tournament every year. The play-in round to you is not the playoffs, right?
I believe the NBA itself has declared that the play-in is not the playoffs.
Okay, so if they made that play-in round, we are not considering that the quote-unquote playoffs.
Yeah, I think they have to actually win through the play-in round to actually qualify for the playoffs. And now the NBA also, doesn't consider, the BAA, NBL.
Right, so maybe we should.
So I'm not 100% always going to go on board with what they want. But I think in this case, I feel more comfortable saying. I'm glad we're avoiding the subject this year, frankly, because if they were going to make it to the play-in, I'm not sure how I would feel about that. But anyway, let's tackle that issue, if that ever happens in the future. We can make an official ruling. Right now, I am leaning toward you have to win in the play-in and make the playoffs to really be considered a playoff.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It'll make this series and the Kings streak of patheticness a little bit better. It just adds another year to it, makes it a little bit longer. So, I'm with that, but I guess we can revisit that in a few weeks when we see how it all plays out.
There you go. So, yes. So the official topic of this show is the longest streaks of sub-500 seasons. So we actually did one a few years ago, now a bit outdated because the Kings keep extending their streak of longest, of longest playoff droughts. Now we're doing the longest streaks of sub-500 records, the longest stakes, as I had typed in our episode notes, which the longest stakes would be interesting.
Ooh, but, I didn't even notice that. I must have subconsciously been like, ooh, nice.
Yeah, a steak. Everybody loves steak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes. So, we're going to start with the current Kings iteration. And by the way, there's more than one for the Kings here.
And both of them are long. They're not. The next one's not 5 years, people. It's a little bit long, too.
No. Yes. So, yes, this is again, they're as we mentioned, longest streak in NBA history, tied for it with lack of playoffs, assuming what we believe to happened with the 1977-1991 Braves Clippers. And yes, they've tied their own record for 15 seasons, 2007 to 2021. And of course, it could continue of being under sub 500. We'll get to the other one in a few minutes, but let's go through this one first. We talk about some of the major events that occurred in the Kings franchise between 2007 and 2021. So first big one, 2008 season, they trade Mike Bibby in the midseason to the Atlanta Hawks. Bibby, the last link to the Kings' glory years. You've got You got Chris Webber, you got Peja Stojakovic, you got Bobby Jackson, you got Vlade Divac, you got all the core guys up there.
Scott
Pollard, yeah.
Lawrence Funderburk.
Lawrence Funderburk is way gone. It's sad. Yeah. Even Rick Edelman's gone, and now you're down to, you've got Mike Bibby, and they were like, all right, Mike, it's been nice, but we're going to trade you to the Hawks. We'll let you, take the Celtics to 7 games in the postseason. And they also, in the offseason in 2008, also trade away, their best player at the time, Ron Artest, officially embarking on a rebuilding project. They're building around 25-year-old shooting guard Kevin Martin, who, hey, he had 24 points per game that year, 62 true shooting. So he's at least a pretty good offensive player, kind of being their best young player. So they decided to do that. 2010, it's looking okay. Like, they haven't exactly. 2009 was a struggle. We'll get to that in a moment. 17-65, not a good season. But 2010, they get Tyrik Evans. He's named Rookie of the Year. He averages 25-5. Which is pretty good. They also draft Demarcus Cousins 5th overall in the 2010 draft. Doesn't seem like too bad of a rebuilding start. Unfortunately, Tyrik Evans, pretty much that was his peak year. And while Demarcus Cousins is certainly a productive player and does some good things, he also has some challenges that we'll get into a little bit later. So, but you could say, oh yeah, hey, I think things will turn around. You got Paul Westphal as the coach. He's had some good history there. He's a little bit older, but things are not necessarily, maybe they're not like looking super up, but they're not like super down. But you might think that they might be doing okay at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the talent, there's definitely some talent there. And you can definitely see, if you look at, this era of Kings teams, you can see a team that maybe in the Eastern Conference makes a low-end 8th seed, maybe in the Eastern Conference, gets that, one game above 500 record or whatever. Yeah. The problem, though, is also playing in what still is a loaded West and what has been a loaded West for many, many years. So you get a team here that's not all together, that has a few pieces, but not all the pieces, and they just can't compete. And the talent is there. The raw talent for a few of the guys is definitely there. It just doesn't come together. It does not become winning basketball at this time, unfortunately. And obviously, as you know, because we're talking about the present Kings team, it doesn't really become winning basketball, really ever yet.
Yeah. So. Yeah. 2012, Jimmer Mania comes to Sacramento, and all 7.6 points per game on 49 true shooting. The Jimmer Mania. It's exciting times. They're continuing a little bit of the stall. Paul Westphal that year, he starts 2-5. They're like, we're going to get rid of Paul Westphal. We'll decide we'll have Keith Smart. The Kings did have a very good move, though. They drafted Isaiah Thomas 60th overall. Mm-hmm. So they got him at the last pick of the second round. He ends up becoming a pretty good player for them. They don't really get a chance to keep him, unfortunately. They kind of trade him away. But, at least they got a couple good years out of Isaiah Thomas. May 2013. So something that's very important during this time is there are constantly, rumors or, their discussion, news about the fact that the Kings might be relocating out of Sacramento. In 2011, they actually were seriously looking to relocate to Anaheim. They filed some trademarks on some new team names, including the Anaheim Royals. They had talks in other markets, but it was getting very serious in 2013 about a move to Seattle. In fact, they came to an agreement with a Seattle ownership group early on in 2013, and were very seriously looking to do that. The deal was done. They were looking to do it. They were going to have Phil Jackson come in and be team president. It was going to be a new Sonics. It was going to be exciting. But then cooler heads prevailed. Sacramento kind of made an offer to get an arena going, and then the NBA ownership committee and then overall the league owners rejected the move from Sacramento to Seattle, which pretty much killed the sale. And then Vivek Ranadive reaches an agreement with the Maloof family to purchase a huge amount of the Kings, about $350 million. So finally the Kings safe in Sacramento. So things are great, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they will never ever be considered. Yeah, I mean things are, at least as of this recording, things are good, obviously with the new building and that sort of stuff. But it feels like a constant. As long as I have been an NBA fan, it feels like the Kings are on shaky ground here. I think mostly because they play in Sacramento, which is considered by many not really as big of a city or a true kind of basketball city or a true major city like a lot of these other NBA franchises around. I mean, most everyone now these days are in a pretty big city, a city that you can at least, justify saying, yeah, that's a major city in America. And Sacramento still kind of remains maybe the one of the weirder or kind of smaller cities on the entire thing. So there's always, as long as even when they were good, even in the day when they were really, really good and not, the seasons that we're talking about here, there was always okay, yeah, they're supported by their local team, but how long can they last in Sacramento? How long can they last in this city? How long can they last in this building? All that sort of stuff feels like it was always coming up. I mean, 2011, there was that the stuff about Anaheim, which we'll talk about a little bit with the Clippers as well. Anaheim, a constant source of attempt, move leverage here. But there's Virginia Beach got mentioned a bunch. The Seattle one, like we said, got super super close. But it feels like they've always been on shaky ground, and I would say, I guess now is the least shaky ground they've been on, but you never know what's around the corner with Sacramento.
Sure. Yeah, and the other cities that are, more small markets, like Salt Lake City or Oklahoma City, those are places where there's not a lot of competition for, pro teams. There aren't Sacramento, it's the middle of California. There's, dozens of teams, not in Sacramento itself, but, within an hour or so. There's lots of options to follow other sports teams, a lot more competition there, where the other markets where you might have some concerns about it, there's not nearly as much competition for it. So they're probably in a little bit of a safer spot in those places, where in Sacramento, there's definitely, a lot more competition.
Yeah, the regionality of Utah Jazz fans, or the regionality of Oklahoma City Thunder fans can stretch well beyond the city and into neighboring states and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the Sacramento Kings, it's like, I mean, if you live 2 hours away from Sacramento, you're probably just a Lakers fan. You know what I mean? And if you live, an hour west of Sacramento, I would hope that you're a Golden State Warriors. So it's like, who are they serving? Especially in that market is very difficult. They're serving, that community, and maybe people a little bit to the east and like Eastern California. But for the most part, there's a good chance that you're probably a Lakers fan. Oh yeah, the Clippers are there too. So if you're not a Lakers fan, you also have the Clippers. And then now you have the Golden State Warriors. And it's like, it's really hard to kind of carve out a niche for the Sacramento Kings.
Sure. So with the new change in ownership, longtime GM Jeff Petrie is out, replaced by Pete D'Alessandro. So, Vivek Ranadive, I have a hard time saying his last name. Vivek, we'll just go by his first name. We'll like Madonna,
he is definitely on that level. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, he's
he has outlandish ideas like Madonna. So that's
right. Yeah, he gets attention. Certainly, he's actually been involved in the NBA before. He was a minority owner of the Warriors. He's the first owner from India. He was born in India. He has a lot of knowledge in tech. That's where he made his money, and so he's considered sort of an innovator, sort of someone who has innovative ideas. So he says, well, maybe we should consider the idea of cherry picking, just have one player on offense the entire time and just do a 4 and 5 on the end and see how that goes. That idea kind of gets laughed at. There's also a bit of instability in terms of like the front office and the coaching. The Kings, they start off pretty good under, Mike Malone. They've hired him. This is the 2015 season. Demarcus Cousins playing really well. And then Cousins misses 10 games with viral meningitis. The Kings kind of fall apart in those 10 games, and then they're like, you know what? We just need to get a coaching change. We need a new coach. We need to be good this season. Darn it! We can't waste any more Demarcus Cousins' good play. So they go to Tyrone Corbin. Corbin goes 7-21, and they're like, you know what? We need to get George Karl. George Karl is, and George Karl had a great history of being a great coach. Lots of good years in Seattle and Milwaukee and Denver. It, makes a little bit of sense now. George is a little cranky. There's some issues there, but it's not entirely the worst idea. But also given the personalities there, George Karl and DeMarcus Cousins, sometimes both guys a little hard to get along with. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. Is I don't mind George Karl in a vacuum, but George Karl and DeMarcus Cousins, and George Karl talking to DeMarcus Cousins, and George Karl getting along with DeMarcus Cousins, that felt like that was going to be a bridge too far. And Jason, not to spoil it, but it was not good. It did not go great.
Yes. So, the Kings finished that season 29-53, despite Cousins having his first All-Star and All-NBA season, being on the second team. So, at the end of that 2015 season, Vlade Divac officially named the top decision maker in the Kings front office.
I'm sure that went great. I can't imagine that didn't go well. I mean, come on. Vlade, it's a Kings legend. Like, he's got to be good at making decisions, right?
Right. Yeah.
Great passer out of the post. Like, he's got to be a good decision maker, right?
Hey, you absolutely. It totally translates. Yeah. Right. Chris Mullin had been around there. He was looking to be maybe, take over the front office. He's gone. He leaves for a coaching job in college. And then Vlade's first major move. It's a cap clearing move, a trade with the 76ers, basically getting rid of a lot of their flotsam. But they end up giving up a unprotected 2019 pick, and they agree to a pick swap in 2017. So it's like, well, it's okay. We're clearing that extra free agency. Their big free agency haul was Rajon Rondo. It was like still pretty good. Marco Bellinelli, he can shoot at least. Kosta Koufos, okay. Caron Butler. So not exactly like murderer's row there,
I remember this happening in real time, and right. It was like Vlade's first big move, like you said. And initially, when people were like, all right, Vlade came in there, he cleared a bunch of cap, and then people found out that it was a pick swap in 2017, and they're like, right. I don't know if I do that, but okay. And then they found out it was an unprotected pick in 2019, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I would do that, but hey, they have cap room. And then they signed Rajon Rondo, Marco Bellinelli, Kosta Koufos, and Caron Butler, and it was like, oh no, oh dear God, what are you doing? Like, it was a good move at first, and then as you got into more and more of the details, and then obviously the conclusion of those details, it was just like, oh no, this is not going to go well, is it? And it didn't. It did not. It definitely did not do well at all.
And they would have had the pick that could have been Jason Tatum instead of getting De'Aaron Fox. now De'Aaron Fox is pretty good,
but they got Kosta Koufos though. So.
Right. Well, they got Kosta Koufos, so you definitely want to get that. So yes, 2017 Kings moved to the Golden One Center in downtown Sacramento, new arena, beautiful new arena apparently. So they get that accomplished. February 2017, end of an era. The Kings, they trade Omri Caspi, who's been a long time King, and Demarcus Cousins to the Pelicans for former King Tyrik Evans, Langston Galloway, Buddy Hield, who's kind of the big haul there, and then a first round pick and a second round pick. Zach Collins later being that first round pick. And then Cousins, later in an interview with the Undefeated, said, hey, I was told a week before this that by Vlade and by Vivek that I'm not going to be traded here. So this kind of comes out of nowhere. I think it's All-Star weekend, I believe. Like he's he's doing like a press conference right afterward. It's during a time in which the NBA doesn't necessarily want that kind of attention. So and then in that interview later, he was asked, is there any part of you that wants to talk to Ronadive or Divac? He says, nah, for what? It was a coward move, so I'm pretty sure I will get a coward response. So, yeah.
Awesome.
that's a good quote there. So, 2018, the Kings draft Marvin Bagley, number 2 overall. This is the only time the Kings have picked higher than 5th during this whole era, which is kind of weird. And we'll get into like their record a little bit because that's kind of interesting. Passing on Luka Doncic here, passing on Trae Young even. Marvin Bagley definitely has been, the worst of the guys who are picked in that top 5. There's some talent there, but definitely has not produced compared to the other guys right around that range. 2019, things are looking up a little bit. They do finish 39-43, so very close to 500. They did miss the playoffs by 9 games, though. The West, as you, of course, mentioned, very tough, especially in this season. Although they had played in the East, they would have only missed it by 2 games. So definitely would have potentially been a playoff. If they just moved to Rochester, everything would have been fine. But, so those are kind of the big highlights during the era. The best player of this era, very clearly, Demarcus Cousins, playing from 2011 to 2017, averaging 21 points per game on 53 true shooting, almost 11 rebounds, 3 assists. Played 7 seasons and almost 15,000 minutes with the Kings. On the court, everything's really good, sometimes really great, but some conflicts with coaches and others early on in his career. He was sent home at the beginning of 2012 by head coach Paul Westphal, who said that Cousins was unwilling, unable to embrace traveling in the same direction as his team. It cannot be ignored indefinitely. And then Paul Westphal gets fired 4 days later.
We'll talk about the coaching changes here in a bit, but it's a wild run of guys in and out and just dysfunction from the top down in this organization. And it's just, nobody really knowing what's up, never really, I mean, building around Demarcus Cousins, but at the same, always being in conflict with it. It was just always a disaster. I mean, just, it sucks how good he was during this era, how productive he was during this era, and how it seemingly they got nothing out of it. And there's, obviously there's blame probably on both sides, there, but, Demarcus maybe being, you wonder how much different it would have been with an actual functioning franchise with Demarcus Cousins. And we're starting to see some stability with De'Aaron Fox. Like you said, he feels like a guy, but who knows? There was times when it felt like Demarcus Cousins was on the right track here, and then things kind of went completely off the rails and whatnot. So I don't know, man. It's wild, but it's the amount of coaching changes and turmoil and all that stuff going on in this era is just, we'd be here all day. I mean, we could literally do an entire show about the dysfunction of the Sacramento Kings over the last 2 decades. Yes. And it could be an entire show on itself, and it's only half of this show. So,
absolutely, yes. So a few more lowlights, I guess, of Cousins during this time with the Kings. November 2012, he was suspended 2 games without pay for confronting Spurs color commentator Sean Elliott in a hostile manner after he had criticized Cousins for attempting to bully Tim Duncan on the court. About a month later, Cousins was suspended indefinitely from the Kings, who accused him of unprofessional behavior and conduct detrimental to the King. The suspension was lifted 2 days later. And then in February 2014, Cousins received a 1-game suspension for punching Patrick Beverley in the stomach. Although
that's fine. I mean, let's be honest.
Right. Patrick Beverley, so yeah.
Right. I think he deserves to get punched in the stomach a few times here and there. So
sure.
I'm okay with that one. That one's fine, yeah.
Yes.
You should be rewarded for punching Patrick Beverley every so often. Not all the time, but every so often.
Once a season.
Yeah, right. So one guy once a season is allowed to punch Patrick Beverley.
Seems fair. Yeah. So we'll have to add that to collective bargaining agreement next time. So, number of coaching changes, they had 9 overall, including 2 in one season, as before mentioned, Mike Malone to Ty Corbin to George Karl. Their best season, as mentioned in 2019 season, finishing with 39 wins. What's kind of interesting is that the Kings, at least lately, like the last, I would say since like 2013, they haven't really been a terrible team. They've just sort of been bad to middling. Outside of that 39-win season, they've won between 27 and 33 games every season since 2013. And like I said, they have not really had a super high draft pick outside of the Marvin Bagley pick, and they've finished above 430 percentage past 3 seasons. So like I said, they've sort of been, it seems like they're trending up at least a little bit. So we'll see if that continues, but they've been, more, again, since like the, mid part of the decade, not terrible, obviously not good, but more just kind of there.
And many would argue, and including, I mean, the whole point of, Sam Hinkie and the process or whatever is this is the worst thing you can be, is like, especially in the NBA, is to be, bad enough that you don't make the playoffs and have no chance at actually making a run in the playoffs, but then good enough where you don't get, a top pick. You're not bad enough to absolutely be in the bottom and have the best, lottery odds. And it doesn't always work out that way. Some teams get lucky. Sometimes, people find their way into the bottom of the lottery or the top few picks or whatever. But still, they've always been, like you said, in this kind of middling area where, bad enough that they're never a real contender, but never truly bad enough to get like a top 5 pick, never truly bad enough to get a shot at the number 1 overall pick, and instead have kind of patchworked it. And to be fair, they've had a lot of talent come through. They've had a lot of, really, really talented players, but never like a run of, 2 straight years or 3 straight years where it felt like they were drafting, bona fide superstars. They've always kind of had to get guys, like you said, out of the top 5 or guys in the top 10. And I mean, they've done an okay job with it, but they've also drafted Marvin Bagley and stuff. So it hasn't always worked out perfectly, but for the most part, they've done a pretty decent job of drafting. It's just they've never gotten the luck of getting, one of those, top few overall picks. And really when they do get that, they usually screw it up anyway. So I guess they find a way to mess it up anyway. It is the Kings. So
sure. The only truly historically bad team they've had during this whole time, 17-65 in the 2009 season. SRS and record-wise is one of the 50 worst seasons in NBA history. But again, outside of that season, it's been more mediocre than terrible. So we'll see if that continues. Maybe they can turn it around. They're not looking, definitely they kind of fell off a little bit this season, but maybe they'll get lucky in the lottery, get that number 1 pick, and then everything will just magically turn around and be happy.
And you're definitely gonna have to add another coaching change there, I think, pretty soon with one Luke Walton.
Yeah, right.
We'll see. Yeah. But again, they re-signed him, so maybe not. But I don't. Yeah. Who knows? You never know. You just never know with them. But all right, Jason, we're going to take this in a completely different direction here. Our next team is, let me scroll down, the Sacramento Kings, 1984 to 1998.
Yes. Rich, I'm sorry. Before we get into that, I've got some breaking news.
Oh my God, go! Is it about Luke Walton?
It is not about Luke Walton, but it is a public service announcement brought to you by Manscaped.com, and the news that we've all been waiting for. The Manscaped engineering team, they have confirmed they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. Now available for purchase in the U.S. and Canada.
No way. I'm led to believe that this new trimmer was released moments ago, Jason. Is that what you're telling me? Moments ago.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that what I have on my desk right here?
It is.
Is that what this thing is? I got a package from you, and I didn't open it yet. I didn't know what this thing was. So let me just quickly, there it is. Now it's open. I now am going to join 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, and you can as well, of course, with Manscaped's offer. We've talked about this on a few shows before, but it again is happening this time. 20% off plus free worldwide shipping. I think that's important there. Worldwide shipping as well. So no matter where you are listening from, you get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. That's FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. And Jason, all joking aside, we were one of the first few people to try out this new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, and I don't know about you, but I am blown away by the performance, the craftsmanship, the details, the ceramic blade, the skin-safe technology. It is so good that it almost, to me, seems as if Manscaped had to work with Elon Musk's engineers to improve this, to ensure that it is as safe as humanly possible. This is really good, this Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. I can't believe it.
Yeah, fantastic. And what really makes this trimmer different than all the other trimmers, it has a new multi-function on-off switch. It can engage a travel lock, created for people who love to travel. And now, you and I, you've been traveling, you've been jet setting all over the world. So absolutely. And the Lawnmower 4.0, it gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when you need a more precise shave. It even allows you to customize your trim all over through additional guard lengths for the sizes 1 to 4. And looks-wise, it's sleek. It is a two-tone matte and a gloss finish. It even features a hot foil stamped black chrome Manscaped logo. You can show that off loud and proud.
Yes, and that I have to say that I recently traveled without the Lawnmower 4.0 because I didn't get it in time, but I traveled with the Lawnmower 3.0, which is fine. The Lawnmower 3.0, as we talked about, is still very good. The problem, though, is that on-off switch and that travel lock would have been very good because my luggage was vibrating for quite amount of time, and I didn't have a chance to get to it, and I got a lot of weird looks from the Uber driver that we had in Las Vegas, who assumed that, I don't know, the wife and I were going to enjoy our time in Las Vegas, and I had to say, no, I promise you, it's a beard trimmer. And they went, okay, I'm sure. And I was like, no, I swear, let me, my wife and I would never have sex. There's no way. Ensure them that indeed, no. Trust me, it's a beard trimmer. But anyway, the optimized Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is waterproof, so you can groom in the shower and not have to worry about making a mess on the bathroom floor. Also, it has a wireless charger, a brand new wireless charging system using electromagnetic induction, which can help the battery length last even longer. And if you're still trimming your face with your ball hair trimmer, stop that. It's time to make some changes and have a very important thing here. You can have the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. Don't be like me. Don't shave your beard and your balls with the same thing. That's weird. Don't do that. You don't have to do that anymore. You're an adult. You don't have to do that anymore. So anyway, get 20% off plus free shipping, as we said, with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. Again, 20% off plus free worldwide shipping with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. Unlock your confidence and always have the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. We promise. Okay. Can I talk about Reggie Theus now?
Yeah, please talk about Reggie Theus.
I'm trying to talk about Reggie Theus.
Yeah,
I know. Never let me talk about Reggie Theus.
I would never let you talk about Reggie Theus. It's time. Finally, it's time. Finally, it's time
to talk about Reggie Theus. So, as I said, we're going in a completely different direction and still talking about the Sacramento Kings because, believe it or not, these guys also had 15 straight years of sub-500 records from 1984 to 1998. Yes, the Sacramento Kings, the Kansas City Kings, it's not a great franchise. It's Jason, it's a bad franchise. It's not, other than the awesome period where they were like the most fun, exciting team in the league. They've been pretty terrible every other time other than that. So,
hey, the early 50s, they were great.
Oh, that's true. Right.
Right.
Who could forget how great
they
were in the early 50s. Anyway, the number of times in the playoffs during this run, this 1984-1998 run, 3 times actually. And ironically, in 1983, when they finished 54-37, as we said here, this streak starts in 1984. They did not make the playoffs in that year when they went 45-37, but they would make twice the playoffs in 1984 as well as 1986, despite under 500 records. Because believe it or not, the West always wasn't the most dominant conference. There was a long time period, where the East was really, really good and the West was kind of bad, and that was this period. And then after many years away, after 10-year absence, they would return to the playoffs in 1996 as well, and that's a team we'll talk about here in a little bit. So as far as major franchise events for this iteration of the Sacramento Kings, one, obviously the biggest event to probably happen is in 1986. They moved to Sacramento. They leave Kansas City. They put Omaha in the rear view. They established themselves in Sacramento, and for this team that has really kind of been all over the place in its history, obviously starting as the Rochester Royals, moving to Cincinnati, doing the Kansas City Omaha thing, then just doing Kansas City. They've now been pretty firmly established in Sacramento for all those years. As we've said, it's always kind of on a wobbly chair, but at least they've been there and they've stayed there for quite a while. But some other things as well. 1988, they hire NBA legend Bill Russell as head coach. Hey, he won a lot of titles and he won a lot of games. I'm sure by osmosis we can start winning games too, right? If he teaches our guys how to win basketball, and it turns out, Bill Russell can win a lot of basketball games. He can play very well. He can't tell the team to. They tried this with Bob Cousy too for years as well. This isn't the first time this franchise has decided, hey, we need a little bit of that Celtics magic to help us go here. But didn't work then, and it didn't work here with Bill Russell as well. And an unfortunate major franchise event at this time is the death of 1988 first round pick Ricky Berry, who we'll talk about here in a little bit as well. But we'll get to him in a sec as we kind of talk about some of the other stuff that happened with the team. But a very tragic thing with Ricky Berry, who showed a lot of promise and felt like he was going to be, maybe not a major star, like a superstar, but at least a guy that they could, use in part of their core moving forward. And unfortunately, he passed away from suicide after his rookie year. They followed that up in 1989 by drafting Purvis Ellison, number 1. That did not go well, because you are listening to this and probably a lot of people are going, who the hell is Purvis Ellison? Yes, that is a problem when you draft a guy number 1 overall, and a lot of people would probably say, I don't know who this is. In 1992, they acquired Mitch Richmond, giving the franchise, I'd say, their first star since Nate Archibald, but you believe that this might be a disrespect to one certain player here.
Yeah, Otis Birdsong. What are we doing here?
You're right.
Come on,
kids dreamed in their backyards, in their driveways, of being Otis Birdsong. Yeah, right. Otis Birdsong was fantastic. Yeah, I feel this is. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You are forgiven, but it's definitely Phil Ford. I mean, come on. There's some. There's some great,
Otis Birdsong, he made 3 All-Star games as a member of the Kings. That's
okay,
all right.
Yeah, there you go. So probably their best team success in Kansas City was mostly due to Otis Birdsong.
I love that his nickname on Basketball Reference is Bird. It took a long time to come with that one. So what are we going to call Otis Birdsong? I don't know. Bird? Yeah. All right, that's fine with us. So
maybe song. It's all
good. Oh, man, yeah. There you go. So anyway, Mitch Richmond comes to town, and he is good. Yeah. He's not as good as Otis Birdsong, or I'd say equally as good. How about that?
Well, all right, fine. Yeah,
equally as good as Otis Birdsong.
Very good. Fair enough.
How they got Mitch Richmond, I still don't know if I quite know why the Golden State Warriors traded Mitch Richmond when they did. But in 1991, they decided, you know what, enough of this shit. We need to get rid of Mitch Richmond. And we need Billy Owens. I don't know. We
need a big guy. They need somebody who's tall and can rebound. And he was number 3 overall pick. So I think there was. They believe they had potential in of getting a star in Billy Owens. It just it was a misevaluation.
Yeah, he was because Mitch was really good. He was a part of a fun team and TMC, and it's like, all right, let's go. And he had 20 points a game, and the Warriors are still kind of bad, but they're maybe going to be good soon. And then
I suspect that the Warriors thought they were going to be getting Billy Ocean, not Billy Owens.
Right, which is if that's impossible to argue with. Yeah, you got to trade Mitch Richmond for Billy Ocean for sure, especially in 1992, the peak of Billy Ocean's run. Sure. You got to think, hey, you know what? it might be a little bit of a down sleep, but you buy low and you sell high, and Billy Owens stock it would be rising soon, as we know in the 90s. It became a prolific pop sensation throughout the 90s.
Yeah,
sure. But anyway, they get Mitch Richmond, and that is a major franchise event. And then I don't know. I mean, the rest of the decade is pretty much like, I don't know. They get Bobby Hurley. He was kind of good. They I don't know. They get Vlade Divac later in the decade. They didn't do much the rest of the decade. Like, what else do you say? Wayne Tinsdale was there. He was cool.
It was a lot of 30-win teams.
Right. They weren't interesting ever.
And then 39-win teams. Yeah, they had Gary St. John as their coach for 5 years. I was surprised by that. I kind of forgot how long he was coach there. Yeah, they just kept churning out teams with Mitch Richmond would score 25 points, and then everyone else would just be kind of like okay, and then they made the playoffs in '96. That was their first one in 10 years, so that was a good thing.
They had those terrible race stripe uniforms.
So
that was a thing.
Not as strong. They had the blue ones were nice. I always like those, but the race stripe ones that didn't turn out well. So not a aesthetically pleasing era for the Kings, or particularly basketball pleasing ones. They had good fan support though.
Yeah, exactly. The fans came there to watch Corliss Williamson and Olden Polynice, the stars of the Sacramento Kings. But
who wouldn't?
Yeah, Mitch Richmond was there, and he was great. So anyway, he is unquestionably the best player of this era. It is almost not even close here. You look at the win shares, and he has 50.4 win shares. The next closest guy is Otis Thorpe. Yes, Kings legend Otis Thorpe at 26. Yeah, Wayman Tinsdale, who is awesome. Wayman Tinsdale isn't great. He had a 24.9 win shares. And I had to double, triple, quadruple check this, that LaSalle Thompson was their third best player of this era. I mean, that is not good. That is a bad era. LaSalle Thompson.
Well, it's kind of like LaSalle Thompson was there for a long time, so somebody had to keep the stats. Yes,
but it's just well known as an absolute bomb of a pick, and just a guy that just never lived up to potential. And he is top 5 of this era of Kings. But anyway, Mitch Richmond, as we said here, traded by the Golden State Warriors for Billy Owens. And then, of course, later in May of 1998, which we are not counting for this, but he is going to be the chain that's going to bring the Kings Chris Webber, as he, along with Otis Thorpe, the second highest win shares guy for the Kings, is going to be packaged together and sent to the Wizards for Chris Webber. And obviously that is going to completely change around the Sacramento Kings and get them in this nice little era where they're fun and they're good and they're interesting and they're actually a title contender. So yay, they get that. But all right, number of coaching changes during this era, 10 coaching changes. 10 coaching changes, a lot of guys. So highlights, I guess I'll use highlights. I guess I can name all of them, but there are a lot of people. Bill Russell, he goes 17-41 in 1988. That's not good. Jack McKinney does 8 games, I should say, during the final year in Kansas City, and he quits because he goes, this is stupid. I don't really want to do this anymore. Dick Motta, Gary St. Jane, they get many, many years as well. I don't know. Eddie Jordan's there for a few years.
So Phil Johnson had his second stint.
Rex Hughes is there. It's like, what
Jerry Reynolds.
Who are these men? Why are they here? So that's the Sacramento Kings. So
not ideal. 17-41. Bill Russell. Not strong. Dick Motta was the surprise one for me. I forgot that he had. I forgot he coached the Kings. I forgot he was one of the 3 Dicks. I think we talked about our last episode. Yes. So
there you go. Anyway, the best season in this run, 1996, as we mentioned here, 39-43, their first playoff berth in a decade. They start the season on a 5-game winning streak, but unfortunately that gets derailed a little bit on November 10th. They have a huge in-game brawl with the Indiana Pacers. 16 players, 8 from each team get suspended. The highest suspensions here, Dale Davis of the Indiana Pacers and Michael Smith of the Sacramento Kings received 2-game suspensions without pay, as well as $20,000 fines. Those two really started the fight in the third quarter as the Kings would defeat the Pacers in Indianapolis. Dwayne Caldwell of the Kings was suspended 1 game without pay and fined $7,500 for leaving the bench area while not trying to break up the fight. I think that's a creative way to say you joined the fight. So,
right. Yeah.
They said he left the bench but did not try to stop the fight. So it's a good way to say that he started the fight. Other guys suspended: Tyus Edney, Byron Houston, Sarunas Maris. I forget how to pronounce his last name.
All right. It's all right. Sarunas Mia.
Yeah, there you go. Sarunas. You know who I'm talking about. Olden Polynice, Lionel Simmons, Walt Williams, a bunch of other guys. Everybody got suspended. It's a big old fight. So
Malice in the Market Square Arena doesn't quite have the same ring.
It didn't. It quite didn't. But anyway, they would tail off with that hot start. They'd actually lose 11 straight games in February as well. Unfortunately, staring down their 10th straight season, missing the playoffs. The Kings, Mitch Richmond gets everybody together, and they rally. They go 9-6 in the final 15 games and capture the 8th and final playoff spot despite a losing record. And they would face the Seattle Supersonics, and they'd win 1 game. They win game 2 on the road.
Hey.
But then they'd lose in game 4. And then,
right.
The Seattle Supersonics would make the Western Conference Finals, or the champion. They would make it all the way to the NBA Finals, I should say.
Sure.
But, anyway, in that year, Tyus Edney selected the All-Rookie team. So there you go. Mitch Richmond averages 23.1 points per game, named the All-NBA third team, and selected to the 1996 NBA All-Star game. So there you go.
Nice year.
Worst season, 19-90, 23-59. This is a very strange year because they obviously have had some bad years. They were trying to kind of get back on track to where they were in the mid '80s when they felt like they had a little bit of steam here, or at least the early '80s, in the late '70s when they had, I guess, 3 straight years they made the playoffs, which is a good run for this franchise. But they decided that what they need to do is acquire veteran talent in the offseason to combine with that young core. So what they do in the final months of the prior year, they acquire Wayman Tisdale, as we talked about, from Indiana. Jason's favorite player of all time and executive of all time, Danny Ainge, is brought in as well. You need some of that Celtics magic in Sacramento.
Yeah,
so you
sure,
bring in
absolutely.
The key to the Celtics late 80s run, Danny Ainge. And in the offseason, they acquire the corpse of Ralph Sampson. At this, I mean, really, I don't know why I can't imagine they thought this was going to be a really good move. I think they just kind of got Ralph Sampson, but they got Ralph Sampson. And then maybe even more importantly to the Celtics' success in the late 80s, Greg Kite is brought in as well. So
you gotta fly the kite and see what happens.
Right. It didn't, I'll tell you, they flew the kites and it did not go very well. So the team is Wayman Tisdale, Danny Ainge, Rodney McRae, Kenny the Jet Smith, Vinny Del Negro, and the first overall pick in that draft, never nervous, Purvis Ellison, baby. This is going to go well. This is going to go great. It's going to be fantastic, and not the case. So obviously prior to the start of the season, they're hit, of course, as we said, with the tragedy as Ricky Berry, who had just completed his rookie season. He commits suicide after an argument with his wife, and he is obviously, he passes away, and you're left with one big chunk of your team kind of missing. With that said, they win the draft lottery. They do get a little bit of good luck on their side, and they select Purvis Ellison with the first pick in the 1989 NBA draft. And Ellison, just to kind of jump ahead here, he's going to play 34 games for the Kings, and he'd be traded in the offseason. So not great value for your number 1 overall pick. After a 7-21 way to start the season, head coach Jerry Reynolds is fired and replaced with Dick Motta, who, Jason, I found out in research for this episode that Dick Motta today helps run a bed and breakfast with his wife in southern Idaho. So I'm not saying, if you're interested,
road trip.
We can bring those lawnmower 4.0s with that travel lock, and you and I, it's on the Utah-Idaho border. It looks very nice. I have the name of it. I don't want to say it on this podcast. I don't want it to get booked up real quick. But if your wife is interested, I think I could probably get Michelle interested, and we can go to Dick Motta's bed and breakfast, and they can go away while you and I talk about the Dick Motta about basketball. So.
There's nothing that I love more than Dick Motta in southern Idaho, so I'm definitely
right. So, Utah-Idaho border, it's Idaho, but I mean, the war stories that Dick Motta could tell in his bed and breakfast would be fantastic. I would wake up very early for that meal. At the very, I'd even use the doilies and the, everything that is needed at this bed and breakfast. But it looks pretty nice. I'm not going to lie. It looks okay. So maybe we'll email them and say, will Dick will he talk to us? Or will he?
Could we record at the bread and breakfast?
That's what I'm saying. It's a business expense at that point. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. There you go.
Just saying. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway.
All right.
At midseason, as things are not going well for this year as well, Kenny Smith, of course, can't have young talent on your team. Got to get rid of Kenny the Jet Smith as quick as you can. He is traded to the Atlanta Hawks for Antoine Carr. So there you go. Kings, of course, finished with a 23-59 record, their lowest win total since the 1959 and 1960 Cincinnati Royals, who both only won 19 games. And as we said, following the season, Ellison is traded to the Washington Bullets. Danny Ainge is traded to the Portland Trail Blazers, and Rodney McRae is dealt to the Dallas Mavericks. So pretty much everything they did in the offseason is blown up and exploded, and they continue on their path of terrible, terrible teams for a while.
Yes. So, fun fact about Purvis Ellison, he, I kind of forgot about the whole, he was only traded in Sacramento after one season. In his third season in the league with the Washington Bullets, he averaged 20 and 11, on a decent shooting percentage and had decent numbers. And then after he left Washington, 2 years later, he was garbage. But he briefly seemed to actually be a good basketball player.
Yeah, it's interesting, and he had a lot of injuries, of course, and his body just really didn't hold up to stuff. And, unfortunately.
But that's.
Do I want to use the terrible Danny Ainge nickname for Purvis?
The Never Nervous? Was that?
No. Danny, always never an asshole, decided to give him the nickname Out of Service Purvis.
Oh,
because he was always hurt.
There you go.
So that's clever.
Clever. Yeah.
Clever stuff, Danny.
Out of Service. Yeah. Weird. Yeah, he was in '92. He was the most improved player in the league. I had completely forgotten.
Yeah, I actually kind of forgot about that run as well, where he was good. Or Sacramento Kings were justified. Hey, look, see, he's great.
Yeah,
so,
after we got rid
of him,
yeah,
you he's good. Do you have him? No, we traded him, but he's good. We told you.
The smart thing. Yes. All right, so we are going to move on to the Fort Wayne / Detroit Pistons of 1957 to 1970. 14 consecutive years of under 500 records. And, the number of times in the playoffs, they went to the playoffs 8 times because it was a different league. Most of that time there were either 8 or 9 teams in the league and 6 of them made the playoffs. So, you had a high percentage of making the playoffs in that time. So, even though they were under 500 of those times, they had a decent number of playoff appearances, especially through the early 60s. It changed a little bit in the late 60s. They even advanced in the playoffs twice. In 1958, which was their first season in Detroit, they beat the Royals, who were in their first season in Cincinnati, in the Western Division semifinals. They would lose to the eventual NBA champion St. Louis Hawks. And then in 62, they beat the Royals again, this time 3-1, and they fell to the Lakers in the division final. So, had a little bit of success there, not too much, but major franchise events. 1957, their last season in Fort Wayne, they would finish 34-38. That record actually resulted in a 3-way tie for first in the West. It was a weird season. But they ended up being seeded third after losing a tie-breaking game to the Hawks, who eventually would make the finals that year and take the Celtics 7 games. After the season, they would move to Detroit. In Fort Wayne, they'd had a lot of success. They had made the 55 and 56 finals in the NBA. Their roots in Fort Wayne actually dated back to the early 40s in the NBL. They won 2 titles there, and they also won 3 World Professional Basketball Tournament titles, which was the big tournament for kind of pro and semi-pro teams at the time. A little bit like smaller, but like the NCAA tournament for college. This was kind of it for the pro and the AAU teams. So, so they had a lot of success in Fort Wayne, but the NBA was, kind of moving to bigger markets, obviously. And, Fort Wayne apparently a little bit too small for the NBA. I don't know. I think a team in Fort Wayne could make it, right?
Today?
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, I really don't. But,
no, all right. Fair enough.
Maybe, but no, I don't think so.
Yeah, you don't think maybe if the Kings need to move place, they can be the Fort Wayne Kings.
Yeah, I mean it's worth a try. Not with my money.
Yeah.
But,
okay. With Vivek's money. Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right, so
the river industry is really looking good these days, so I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right, is Fort Wayne? They're one of those river cities, right? I don't know anything about Fort Wayne. No, they're not even a river city. I don't know how. Why Fort Wayne even?
I'm not sure we got that. No, it was a fort at one point. I'm pretty sure. So, forts. Yeah, forts are big.
Yeah, Cool.
1959 midseason trade. The Pistons send their top star away, George Yardley. He had just set a record with 2,000 points in the season, but he was getting older, and the Pistons were looking to move on, so they traded to Syracuse for Ed Conlon. Ed Conlon, not really a player of note. I'm not really sure why Ed Conlon was younger, and it was okay, but I'm not really sure why they traded their best player there, probably just because they were sick of him. I don't know. 1962, the Pistons drafted Dave Debuscher, fourth overall pick in the 1962 draft. They also traded Gene Chu, who had been one of their older stars, to the Knicks. That season, they also moved from the Detroit Olympia Arena, which was the home of the Red Wings, and it opened in 1927, to the Cobo Arena, which was brand new at that point, from 1960.
The Giant hadn't even been thrown off the top of it yet. So
the Sheik had already bled there, I'm sure.
Yeah. But the minute it opened, the Sheik was bleeding all over the floor.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Yes. 1964, the Pistons missed the playoffs for the first time since 1949, their first year in the BAA. So they had made the playoffs every season in the league, despite, again, having at this point 7 or 8 years under 500. June 1964, it's a trade. It is the biggest trade involving the most players in NBA history up to that point. The trade is the Pistons send Bob Ferry, Bailey Howell, Les Hunter, Wally Jones, and Don Ohl to the Baltimore Bullets for Terry Disinger, Don Coaches, and Rod Thorne. Of course, Rod Thorne, being famous later as a executive in the NBA for various teams. Bailey Howell, and Terry Disinger, probably the most noteworthy players there. Yes, so this there's a really good post on Piston Powered from 2011 by Dan Feldman, who did some research to this. Apparently, many of the players had feuded with the coach, Charles Wolf, the season before. Unfortunately, the talent didn't really work out for their. Terry Disinger was definitely the best player coming back from the Bullets. The problem is that he unfortunately had a ROTC commission from Purdue, and had to go into active military service after the season, missing 2 years. And then, was really never quite the same player in the NBA. He was solid, but, he had looking like he could be a star. He had won Rookie of the Year. And then when he came back, it was just sort of like solid, but not spectacular. So Pistons don't get much out of that. 1965, Dave Debuscher is named player coach. Going to get more on that in below, but we'll put a pin in that one. 1966, they draft Dave Bing in the first round. He's a second overall pick in the draft. So good times there. 1968, the Pistons move to the Eastern Division. Chicago, Seattle, and San Diego had all recently joined the league. And then the NBA finally recognized, hey, Baltimore's on the East Coast. Maybe we should shift things around a little bit. And Detroit ended up being the beneficiary, I guess, somewhat of that. 1969, they end up trading Dave Debuscher, who was the player coach for 3 seasons, to the Knicks for Walt Bellamy and Howard Comives. So that ends up, Debuscher ends up, of course, going on to great success for the Pistons. The Pistons actually do okay, not necessarily with Bellamy. They end up, shipping Bellamy out, but they end up, doing all right. So it's not necessarily the worst trade ever, but, Debuscher definitely was kind of the foundational star of their team during the mid-'60s, and then, the Pistons, unfortunately, didn't have a lot of success there. A little postscript. In 1971, after drafting Bob Lanier, the Pistons, who are now back in the West, this is the first season of conference play, they would finally break their under 500 streak. They had a 45-37 record. However, they failed to make the playoffs because they were 4th of 4 teams in the tough Midwest division. And at that point, it was 2 teams per each division. And then, unfortunately, they were played too tough of a division and did not make the playoffs. So they were not able to make the playoffs until the 1974 season. So, best player of the era, Bailey Howell probably would be my pick. Played from 1960 to 64, averaging 21 points per game, almost 12 rebounds per game. 54 win shares, more than double of anybody else, kind of played during that era. Was 1 time on the All-NBA second team, 4-time All-Star. You can make somewhat of a case for Gene Chu, maybe Dave Debuscher. Dave Bing definitely, was the biggest star for the Pistons kind of toward the end of this era, but only like played like 3 years of it. So I think Howell kind of is the better choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. And if you look at the number of coaching changes, there were 7, including 5 mid-season changes. So they had 2 player coaches, Dick McGuire, who was in his final season as a player, and then Dave Debuscher. Now, Dave Debuscher, his first NBA game as coach was on his 24th birthday. 24 years old.
Can you even fathom that in today's game?
No, I cannot.
It's just so hard to believe. Imagine any 24-year-old player in this current NBA, being like, all right, guys, come on, this is what I need you to do. Can you imagine any of the guys that are 30 years old listening to that 24-year-old guy tell them what to do? There's no way.
Yes, I cannot. No. And from that same Piston Power post that I mentioned before, the Debuscher was a little bit of an eccentric coach. He had a habit of, when things were a little bit of grim, when they were traveling, he would pull a harmonica from his pocket after losing game and play a song, "Love Makes the World Go Round, but Baby, Money Greases the Wheels." So I'm sure it's a jam. And then, there were some reservations about Debuscher, being so young, but they hated their coach so much that, everybody was really excited. There's a quote from Don Butcher described as stocky. He said, "Even I dunked it, and I haven't touched the rim in 5 years," after, each player immediately took turns dunking the ball into the basket. So, but yeah, it's didn't go well. They were basically under 30 wins all of those seasons, or just at about 30 wins those seasons. And then Debuscher later would admit, it was a big mistake. I wasn't mature enough. It hurt me as a player thinking about what we could do on the floor. So interesting stuff there. Best season, they were 40-42 in 1968. They made the playoffs there with 8 of 12 teams now taking the postseason. And it took the Celtics to 6 games. Actually had a 2-1 lead in that series on the Celtics before falling. So, it's a nice little season there. Their worst season, 1964, they won 23 games. It was their players feuding with Coach Charlie Wolf, or 1966, which they had 22 wins and was Debuscher's first full season as a player coach. Probably the realization that, hey, this is not going to work very well. This is not a good decision.
Yeah, it's a lot goes into it to try to do both, and it's it's especially the age, it's just there's a reason this never happens anymore. It probably will never happen again. So
I can't really even imagine the concept of player coach, plus much less a player coach of being that young. That just seems like, and I know the NBA stopped having player coaches in the early 80s. I think Dave Cowens was the last one in the late 70s. So that's not going to happen again. But interesting stuff.
You can have your coaches on the floor, and even those, the kind of we have this guy on our team and he's a coach on the floor, he's a coach on the bench. All those guys are 38 years old. It's like Lindsey Hunter and those types of guys. You know what I mean? In the tail end of their career, I just cannot imagine De'Aaron Fox being you know what? Hey, De'Aaron, you're the coach now. Why? No, I don't want to do that. Nor would you want to do that, as Debuscher said. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? I have enough to worry about already. Just trying to be good and play well, let alone try to do both. So not a good plan. Not a good plan.
Yeah. So Dave Debuscher has the 6th most games as a player coach in NBA history.
Wow.
The 5 ahead of him are Richie Guerin with 372. He had 2 separate stints with the Hawks. Lenny Wilkins with 328 with the Sonics and the Trailblazers. Paul Seymour with 279 with the Nationals. Al Servey with 267 with the Nationals. Nationals love their player coaches.
Yeah.
Bill Russell, 245, of course, with the Celtics, and then Debuscher is next. So, one of 6 players with more than 200 games of doing that. So, definitely a rare thing. There's, there's quite a decent number of players who had 40 or less game stints, but extended stints as player coach, definitely not something that was super common.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
All right. We're ready to talk Wolves.
I am absolutely ready. I would love to talk about
Let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. 12 straight under 500 years from 2006 to 2017. They make the playoffs one time in that era as far as major franchise events. Really kind of kickstart this era in 2007 by trading Kevin Garnett. This July 31st, 2007. They traded him to the Boston Celtics for Al Jefferson, Theo Ratliff, Gerald Green, Sebastian Telfair, Ryan Gomes, 2 first-round picks, plus cash considerations. At this point, the largest combination of players and picks ever traded for one single player in NBA history. And it's definitely justified because it's worth it. They win a title their first year. Kevin Garnett's great in Boston. It works out pretty well. But, I mean, that is a haul and a half. Al Jefferson, Theo Ratliff, Gerald Green, Sebastian Telfair, Ryan Gomes, and 2 first-round picks, all for Kevin Garnett. Spoiler, it doesn't all work out for the Timberwolves as well as it did for the Celtics, as evidenced by the fact that they would go on to, miss, be under 500 a lot more times after this. But anyway, then in 2008, really kind of the new era, and there's going to be a lot of eras in this Timberwolves run, so don't worry. The Kevin Love era begins. In the 2008 draft, they acquire him. They trade O.J. Mayo, Antoine Walker, Greg Buckner, and Marco Jaric to the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for then 5th overall pick Kevin Love, Mike Miller, Jason Collins, and Brian Cardinal. The Kevin Love era officially begins. June 2009, the Kahn era begins. David Kahn becomes the president of the team and is bad at making decisions and bad at making quotes and bad at being the president of the team in all facets of being the bad. We could do an entire episode on David Kahn things that happened, but we're not going to do that because that's going to be bad. No, but it's going to be a bad show, but we could, and we might sometime. November 2010, Kevin Love at this point, becomes kind of a bona fide star in the league, becomes just kind of one of the better, stat guys in the league. He gets a ton of points, a ton of rebounds. He actually gets a franchise record 31 rebounds and 31 points in November 12th, 2010, the NBA's first 30-30 game in over 28 years. Then, not a lot of stuff happens for the next few years. He is good. He scores points. He gets rebounds. Nothing else really happens with the team. Things don't go well. Things go bad. There's really not. I mean, we could do an entire show about this era of the Kings and just terrible, terrible decisions. But all you need to know is the team does not win in this time period. Kevin Love is great. Team doesn't win. And then in August 2014, they decide that the Kevin Love era is going to end. And then the Timberwolves, Cleveland Cavaliers, and Philadelphia 76ers agree to a 3-way trade that's going to send Kevin Love to the Cavaliers to join LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. The new formation of the LeBron James announces, hey, I'm coming back to Cleveland. Kyrie Irving is already there. They have the number 1 overall pick, and they decide to trade that. That's Andrew Wiggins. They trade that pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Kevin Love. Also, Anthony Bennett, Thaddeus Young, and a trade exception are part of that deal. So you get Andrew Wiggins. He kind of forms this new thing, whatever the Minnesota Timberwolves are trying to do. Flip Saunders returns as coach. He was obviously coached during the glory days of the Timberwolves. So, hey, it makes sense. We'll bring him back. They actually end up drafting Karl Anthony Towns with the number 1 overall pick. That's good. Andrew Wiggins wins Rookie of the Year. They're still not winning. Kevin Garnett returns for the last run of his career. They're still not winning. Things don't go well. And unfortunately, in bad news, Flip Saunders is diagnosed with lymphoma. And he passes away. Sam Mitchell kind of takes over as coach in the absence of Flip Saunders. And then pretty soon after, that era is done. And now the Thibodeau era begins. On August 20th, 2016, the Minnesota Timberwolves agree to have Tom Thibodeau become their head coach and president of basketball operations. He had previously been an assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves from 1989 to 1991. And Thibodeau starts kind of adding pieces to the puzzle here. The Jimmy Butler era begins. Yes, another era. On June 22nd, 2017, they acquired Jimmy Butler and the 16th overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft. They traded to the Bulls. They trade Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and the 7th overall pick, which ended up being Lauri Markkanen, to form the new era here with Jimmy Butler. And they finally make the playoffs and finish over 500. But everybody hates each other. They lose in the first round. And, for people that are watching the NBA today, the Timberwolves are bad again, for many, many years after this, too. So, it's really hard to sum up this era of the Kings other than they go through many, many different eras, and all of them are unsuccessful, basically.
You said Kings twice there when you meant Timberwolves, but it's just easy to like.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yes, it's been tough. That Kevin Love era that looked like it was going to turn like in 2014. They finished 40-42. They actually really outperformed or underperformed. They should have been like a 48 win team.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that team here in a bit. I mean, that's a really fun team.
Yeah, they were definitely a team. Looked like they were going to be able to run early on the decade. But yeah, Love just it didn't quite fit for whatever reason, and they ended up like they had that really. It looked like that team with Butler and Karl Anthony Towns, obviously great talent, and Wiggins, definitely had a lot of potential. It felt like, oh yeah, that's going to be a team that could, be really good for a while, and then the vibes get bad. Butler leaves, and then like I said, that unfortunately, despite Towns' talent, they just haven't really been able to get much around him or have the right health or have the right mix or whatever.
Yeah, it's been a lot of just weird decisions and bad decisions and stuff like that. Just it like, and all in all, what's so weird about this Timberwolves run is, like you said, like you look at it and you're like, that team is good. Like they have a lot of good talent. Like just be good, just win games, and then they just don't. Like Karl Anthony Towns is like one of like just an incredible talent, like a really like a guy that can literally do it all on the court. I mean, except for I guess play defense, but he can do everything. I mean, hey, you can figure out how to work around that. You can find some other guy, and it's just never ever happens, and they keep moving pieces around and hoping that one time it's going to click, and it just never ever clicks. But we'll get to that 2014 team because it's an interesting one here. But the best player of this era of Timberwolves, unquestionably Kevin Love. 47 win shares from him during this time. Huge stats. Becomes one of the NBA's top stars at the time. It just never quite translates to winning. And this, I was shocked when I saw this. Kevin Garnett is second at 26.9 win shares. Now, okay, he plays only 2 prime years of his career in this window that we're talking about here, this 2006 to 2007. I mean, we're talking very, very minimal amount of Kevin Garnett years. And then he comes back in that last run, and by that last run, he's pretty much just a figurehead. He's just kind of there. He's still okay. He's still scoring a little bit, but I don't know. Jason, does this say more about KG or more about the franchise? That in this run, which is not a clear he's second to Kevin Love.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that says it says a lot about both, I guess. The fact of, he was incredible in those 2 years before he left and went to the Timberwolves. The fact that they couldn't build a great team around him for so little of the time in which he was there, that says a lot about the franchise as well, and it says a lot about the rebuilding. And they've had some good players since then, definitely some solid players, but I'm not sure. I think it says equally about both, to be honest.
Other contenders here: Ricky Rubio, 23.2 win shares. Karl Anthony Towns, 20.9. Nikola Pekovic, baby. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. 18.8 win shares here. And goddamn Gorgie Jang is also at 18.7. I mean, this is bad. And then Timberwolves stat stuffer back in the day, Al Jefferson as well. 17.2. Never quite had his top tier run within the Timberwolves. That kind of came with the Jazz and a few other spots that he would go. But he was obviously came in the Garnett trade and felt like he was going to be the next era, and then he wasn't the next era, and then he was gone, and then obviously Kevin Love kind of filled that gap that they thought Al Jefferson was going to fill, but just of course never translated to winning. 7 coaching changes in this run: Dwayne Casey, Randy Whitman, Kurt Rambis, Rick Adelman. I always forgot that Rick Adelman coached the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he did. Flip Saunders, Sam Mitchell, and then finally Tom Thibodeau does the final run there. And then the best season, as we said, that 2014 season, they go 40-42. They acquire Kevin Martin in the offseason, which, again, it's the second time we've mentioned Kevin Martin here. He had some much-needed shooting to the team, and otherwise, there's not a ton of super interesting things about that team or that year. It's just Kevin Love was great. He had 26.1 points per game. That was a career high. He had 12.5 rebounds per game. That was good. Kevin Martin was really good when they brought him in, 19.1 points per game. He shot 38% from 3. Nikola Pekovic was good. Ricky Rubio was good. And this, as you said, should have been that aha moment for this franchise. It should have been like, all right, here we go. We built something. But of course, then in the offseason, they trade Kevin Love. So it's like, oh, okay, well, never mind then.
Yeah.
Then they decide, you know what, this isn't working. Let's blow it all up. And it's like, no, it was working. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, they were afraid Love was going to leave. And
and I think he made it pretty clear that I'm kind of done with this whole thing. So
I get it. But yes, obviously it has not really worked out that well.
No, the Andrew Wiggins thing. And it felt like Wiggins would be good, and Wiggins is not good.
Right.
So
it's
also not a Timberwolf anymore. So anyway, the worst season without a doubt is the 2010 season. They go 15-67. The year, though, it starts out on the good front here. They have an embarrassment of draft riches, Jason. They have, thanks to various trades, 6 picks in the 2009 pick. They had 4 first-round picks. They have the number 5, the number 6, the number 18, and the number 28 slots, as well as the number 45 and 47 picks in the second round. Unfortunately, the 2009 draft, most known for the Minnesota Timberwolves drafting 2 point guards, and neither of them being Steph Curry, because they draft Ricky Rubio, who doesn't come over immediately because he's got, stuff going on in Spain or whatever. But at the time, Ricky Rubio was a sensation. I totally get that pick. That's fine. It's whatever. But they had drafted another point guard, Johnny Flynn. Then the next pick, the Warriors go, I guess we'll get Steph Curry. We really wanted Johnny Flynn, but anyway, I guess we'll draft Steph Curry, this little plucky guy out of Davidson whose dad played in the NBA. I guess we'll take Steph Curry. Fine.
Yeah. Hey, Johnny Flynn. Yeah, it was great that like 6 overtime game with at Syracuse.
Yeah. Johnny Flynn. I was a Johnny Flynn believer. I remember at the time being like, dude, this guy's gonna be good. He's plucky. He can get all over the court. He wears headbands. That's cool.
Yeah.
It was not good. And
yeah, I think he was okay, but he got hurt. Right. Yeah, not that you would have wanted to pick him over Steph Curry, but still.
Yeah, it's one of those things, too. Like, at the time, nobody really thought Steph Curry would be this, but it's still just in hindsight, you're just like, ooh.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thought that Steph Curry would become the best shooter in NBA.
Right. Like, this man is going to transform the NBA. Yeah. I mean, he got drafted and he looked like a 7-year-old. You know, when he got drafted, there's nobody on that day that said, you know what? I think in 10 years, this guy's going to completely transform the way that this game is played. Nobody quite thought that, but still, it just stings that you take 2 point guards, and neither of them is Steph Curry. Well, then they decide, hey, you know what? Let's take 3 point guards, because then they draft Ty Lawson. They do trade Ty Lawson. They don't keep him. Then they draft Wayne Ellington. Then they draft Nick Kalithis. I think he came over like 5 years later or something like that. He had stuff to do in Greece. And then they draft somebody named Henk Norrell, who was from the Netherlands. He also never came over. But they had a lot of draft picks, and it ended up with Ricky Rubio, Johnny Flynn, and Wayne Ellington. So it didn't work out very well. It's a fun team, though, in some respect, in that they score a lot. They give up a lot of points. They have the NBA's fastest pace. But really, they score a lot of points, but in totality, in the offensive rating, they're not very good, and defensive rating, they're pretty bad as well. Kevin Love, as a trend he is good here, 20.2 points per game, 15.2 rebounds per game. Michael Beasley, yes, the Michael Beasley era in Minnesota, he was pretty good as too, 19.2 points per game. But things get really dicey after them in terms of talent. Luke Ridnour, Anthony Randolph, who I always thought Anthony Randolph was going to be like the next big thing, and it never quite happened. We all did. Yeah, Martell Webster, who I thought was really good too, and it never quite worked for him either. Yeah. Wesley Johnson, and the last gasp of Darko Milicic on this team.
Manna from heaven.
So,
yes. 8.3 points per game of Manna from heaven. Yeah, he was only 24 at the time.
I know, and it felt like he had been in the league for 10 years at that point. He had been in the league for like 7 years, and it was just like, you're still not that great, are you? And this is, I think he's talked about this era too, where he just like felt like he had to still play basketball. Because I think like you read about him now, and he's in like a very good place, I think, in his life and all that sort of stuff. But he was like horribly depressed when he was in the NBA and stuff. And he mentions this year being like the time when he was just like, what am I doing? Like, why am I playing this? I don't really want to play basketball anymore. So good for him to turn things around. But as we said, they draft Ricky Rubio. He does not come over immediately. Johnny Flynn gets drafted. He's pretty good for a while, but then he gets hurt, and that's kind of the end of that. And the team, they're 13-43 by the All-Star break, and they lose 15 games in a row to end the season at 15-67. So that is the worst of the Minnesota Timberwolves seasons. So
and we had to deal with Kurt Rambis too.
He did have Kurt Rambis.
Yeah, we had to deal with Kurt Rambis. And Kevin Love only played under 30 minutes per game, even though he was clearly the team's best player for both those seasons, because they win 17 games the next season. So he does play 35 minutes the next season. So they corrected that. But that was that was a whole strange situation. So Rich, we've been going pretty long here. We've got some other teams to talk about that have some I guess fun Clippers teams. I'm going to put fun in quotes.
None of this is fun, but I enjoy it. I mean, it's I guess it's fun. Talking about bad teams is actually kind of fun. So because good teams is they're good. They played and they scored and they stopped people from scoring. That's fun. Talking about bad teams and David Kahn and bad. I mean, this is fun. So we've unfortunately gone very long in these first 4. So
so we have 4 more to cover. So I think we're gonna put a pin in it here. We're gonna come back for a part 2 and talk through the rest of those teams, give it the full attention that deserves. I mean, we definitely want to give the Los Angeles Clippers franchise deserving of all of our time and attention.
We got 2 Clippers teams. We got a Warriors team. We got the Mavericks. These need all the time. We can't rush through the terrible Clippers runs, with the exception of I love that essentially with these Clippers, just kind of give you a spoiler for episode 2 here, part 2, 1980 to 1991, and then 1994 to 2005. So essentially, other than 2 years where they just squeaked by over 500, 1980 to 2005, the Los Angeles Clippers. I absolutely love it. So I can't wait.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to wrap it up here. We will be back soon with part 2. Hope everyone enjoyed the program, and keep coming back. You can find us at at the Step Back at fansided.com. We are on all of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcast. Please check us out there. And also, please leave us a rating and review if you dig what we're doing. Check out Manscaped, the new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code FANSIDED20 at manscaped.com. So we're also on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to check us out there at Over and Back NBA, want to send us a nice message, we would greatly appreciate it. So thanks, everyone, for listening. We're back again soon.